All right. Welcome to the Meshpoint podcast. Tonight, we're excited to have Ben Bullock. He's the head football coach at Highland Prep in Orlando and newly minted state champion. Coach, how you doing tonight, man?
Good. I appreciate you guys having me on. This is awesome. I've been gassed up about this for about a month. I'm excited to be on tonight, talk some ball, and I appreciate it. It's been an exciting season.
We're excited to have you on, man. It's great, and excited to talk about your program and kind of where you've brought it to and the option principles you're using at your school. It's gonna be fun tonight, man. It's gonna be fun. So, man, just as always, kick us off, right? Talk to us about your journey from playing football growing up all the way up into now being the head coach at Highland Prep.
Well, like most people, I started in youth football. So my father was my first football coach overall. I mean, he's the one that got me in the sport. He started our youth league in our town, and really, we didn't really have, where we grew up, we didn't really have a youth opportunity at the time. We had to travel to a nearby city to have that opportunity. So he started a youth organization in our town, and I was part of that. My brother and I were, and grew up through that, and he transitioned through that youth league, helped get it started, kind of pass it on to others, and it's flourishing now. It's a great organization. And then he took over and was asked to go up into modified football, which in New York is middle school football. So I transitioned with him there into middle school football, and then he wanted to stay there. As I started getting to high school, ninth grade year, starting to get to JV, he wanted to stay there and kind of let me and my brother kind of do our own thing, move on our own path, and see what we can do. And unfortunately, at the time, our high school program, had been kind of the program that everybody kind of looked down on for a long period of time. We were 1-9, 2-8. We're good at other sports. We weren't a football school, and never were going to be one. And I was very fortunate. My sophomore year, we hired Dick Russ, and Dick Russ is a legend in New York State. He was at Shenango Forks High School for 40 plus years, I think, at least 30 plus. Retired, and then decided to take over our program in my sophomore season, and that's where the program really changed. We had some kind of okay years, some 5-4, 4-5, and then my senior year with a lot of guys that we've been playing a lot of football with since we were kids, made the state semis for the first time in school history. Won a section title, first state tournament ever for a school, and really that's where it kind of capped off and started kind of some success within that program. And Coach Russ is the reason why I'm in coaching. I'd go over to his house and talk football. He'd have me over to the pool and just chit chat, and I wanted to soak in everything that I could from him, which was awesome. It was awesome to have a high school head coach like that. Transitioned to college. I went to Brockport State, which is a Division III school in Rochester, New York. Played for Coach Salamone, and again, another great experience for me. From my education there to my time there, I was on some very, very good teams. I was not the main reason why we were those very, very good teams, but we had a great group of guys, from star players to cast guys, that group, really kind of team guys that wanted to be a part of it and work hard. And we ended up being Elite Eight in 2002, made a playoff appearance in 2000, undefeated regular season, lost in the first round the next year to Rowan, who at the time, New Jersey was a powerhouse. They were number 2 in the nation. And then the next year we win a playoff game. We go back to Rowan and upset them at their place, and then end up losing in the Elite Eight to Tom Arth, who was the Akron head coach, I believe. He was at UT Chattanooga. That's when he was at John Carroll as a quarterback. We lost those guys. So had a great playing experience with Coach Salamone, and was very fortunate that after I got done playing, Coach gave me an unpaid intern job the next year. So after I got done playing, I interned with him the next year. Very fortunate that he felt highly enough that I was a GA the year after that. And then I stayed 3 more years after my GA year as a full-time coach. He promoted me again full-time. I ended my time there as defense line coach and special teams coordinator there at Brockport State. After that final year I was there, wanted to see if I could make this a profession, try to take the next steps, and got hired as the defensive coordinator at Hartwick College in Oneonta, New York, right outside of Cooperstown, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. All that in upstate New York, beautiful place. And I worked for Coach Mark Carr there, which is another great experience for me. Towards the back half of that, the last 2.5 years, my wife was actually living here in Orlando while I was trying to figure out the college coaching world, try to see where the next stop was going to be. And sometimes timing, it's not all about your ability and coach. Sometimes timing and different things are why some guys can make the profession in college coaching and move on and move forward. And unfortunately, last year I was there, we lost 8 straight games my last year in college football. And it's just hard to find the next stop after that. So she loved it here. Orlando's a great place. We love it. Interviewed at Mount Dora High School. I was fortunate enough to get the job at Mount Dora. So I was at Mount Dora High School in 2012 and 2013 as a defense coordinator. And then Coach Grabowski, who hired me, was very fortunate. Coach took a chance on a New York guy. He left and went to a high school, Red Bank High School in Tennessee. He left, and then I was promoted as the head coach in 2014. So 2014, I was there at Mount Dora, went 8-2, made the state playoffs. Then we left, and I wanted to move a little bit closer into Orlando. So I took the job at Ocoee High School, 7A high school, a little bit bigger high school in Orlando, a school that had only been around for 10 years. It was an overflow high school. 2-8 was our typical year for them. And we went 6-4, 7-3, and made the playoffs for the first time in school history. First district championship in school history. That was an awesome experience, seeing those guys really see success for their first time and how excited they were for it. And then in 2017, I got approached about an opportunity at Lake Highland Prep. It's a really, really unique place. And what really struck me about it was, the opportunity and the challenge to build a program in a different way, in that, like I talked earlier a little bit about that high academic environment, but also too, we're a pre-K through 12 school. So my wife's there. She's got a job there now. I'm there. And then our 7-year-old's there too. He's been there since he was in pre-K. So, we went from being separate in 2 different states, New York and Florida, to having the family all in one school at one time. So it's a pretty cool experience. And obviously this year we capped it off with state championship. So it's been a really great experience there at Lake Highland.
And when you were a DC, were you the D-line DC?
I've done a bunch of different things. I've coached in my time in college football and high school football. I've coached every position at least once.
Right. When you were the DC, I'm just curious if
when I was a DC, I prefer to be the linebackers coach.
Yeah, right.
I've been the safeties coach as the DC, and I've also been the D-lines coach. I've done that. I prefer, especially in the system we run, I prefer to be linebackers coach.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I was just curious if you were D-line DC.
Yeah,
that's unusual.
Yeah, it was a lot of just being, just what we had and what we could get our, staff wise, what was the best fit at the time. And then my last years at Brockport State with Coach Salmon, I was defense line coach, but I was a special teams coordinator. So that lended some other things too. So,
right. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt, because during those special periods of D linemen, well, some of them are, but some of them aren't, right? So somebody's got to be working with those guys while you're doing the other stuff. I was just curious because that's not
it's great.
Normal. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate to have an intern with me too that had played for me at that time and was able to kind of do some stuff, get a lot done with them that you normally wouldn't since I wasn't there.
Yeah, no doubt. So you mentioned quite a few coaches, and I'm assuming probably all of them are going to answer, going to be some answers to the next question, but talk about like when you're looking at your opportunity at Lake Highland Prep, or when you're DC, with a wife in Orlando, talk about maybe some mentors that you really had some conversation with to kind of help mold you and shape you into the decisions that you've made today.
Yeah, for me, it started with my dad, at a very young age, and really football was a family event for us. It was, some people go, fishing, some people go hunting, some people go play golf, things like that. Football with us was an event, and we'd go, we used to play games on Saturdays, and we'd go and watch. He'd let me pick out a random Friday night game when we weren't playing, so we can go to a Friday night game and just talk ball, talk situations, and just go to a game, down the street of a different high school. And then Coach Russ for me in high school was a huge thing. Coach Russ was a guy that, when I started getting into coaching, when I was an intern and I decided that this was going to be kind of my profession, he did everything he could to take me everywhere I wanted to go. He would take me to some gym and alley clinics, and he would know all these guys already. He's been around the profession for 40 years, 50 years, and would take me there and introduce me to people and would take me to these clinics all over the Northeast. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 22 years old trying to figure it out. And then Coach Salmon was my college coach, was awesome too, really getting me in the profession, teaching me how to recruit. Unfortunately, when I took the job at Hartwick, so that was the fall, I took it in the spring, but my first training camp was the fall of 2008. He came out training camp so gassed up that I was a coordinator and, get my first shot at it. And then unfortunately he got sick. He got throat cancer, and then he passed away in December. So literally that's how quick that went. And then unfortunately, Coach Salmon in 2013 got ill, and then 2015 he passed away too. And those are two guys I leaned on a lot. But I've kind of transitioned a ton, and I wish when some of these decisions that I make now, and I'd love to have them around. I bounce things off my dad, but I love to have those guys around. But I think back about some of the things that during my playing days and my coaching days with them, some of the things that they would do and install and how that might fit the situation and what they would think. And even though they're not around, they're still a mentor for me. It's still things I think about. And then now that I'm in Florida, when I first got here, my defensive line coach was a parent, but he had been the head coach at Eustis High School down the street from me at Mount Dora, a big rival. And he had been around a long time. And he's like, listen, Ben, if this is where you're going to be, let's go talk to some people. And he introduced me to a lot of people that were well-known in Florida. Coach Darlington, that's how I got to know Rick Darlington. That's how I got to know some other people in the area and kind of immerse myself in Florida football to a point where I really wanted to learn everything there was about it. I really enjoyed being a coordinator for those first 2 years in high school because it gave me an opportunity to figure out what Florida high school football was like, because it's different. It's different than New York football. It's different. It's very regional. So it gave me an opportunity to really learn with Coach Grabowski as the head coach and really learn what Florida football was like and kind of, the cliche term is culture, but kind of just, how things operated down here, what a great program looked like and really get to know some things. So I still bounce some stuff off those guys. Coach Hedrick is Matt Hedrick's the head coach at Bishopmore. He's right down the street from me. Him and I bounce ideas off each other. We'll have small little head coach summits and kind of like talk about some of the current states of high school football and some of the things they're doing, some of the things we're doing, and bounce some ideas off each other. Because I do think, as a head coach, it's good sometimes to get with another head coach because you really understand those kind of some issues and things you want to try to improve in the program differently than when you were an assistant. So, those are really the ways I kind of think about, from a mentor standpoint, how I kind of think and how I kind of, try to make some decisions as the head coach now based on my past with Coach Russ and Coach Salmon and my dad. And, those were a big influence on me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, Coach, speaking of like 50 Shades of Gray, right? When I think about triple option in your experience, I'm laughing because that's kind of been my experience too. Like, talk about your evolution of triple, there at Lake Highland prep, you know what I mean? From the flex bone all the way to kind of where you're at now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give you the kind of, because I can talk. I'm going to give you the long answer a little bit. I saw change of program. So when Coach Russ took over in my sophomore year of high school, so I think that'd be like the 96 season, we were maybe like a pro style team trying to run ISO with people. And he came in, he'd been running the option in different ways at Shanghai Force for a while. And he went out and really dove into midline. And like, that's when midline was really kind of getting hot and was kind of part of it. And he went out and met with tons of people all over the country. And that's when you had to like go and meet people and you couldn't just Zoom them. And met with people. And that's where we kind of took off. We were an option style team. My time there, my 3 years there, I was a B-back in that system. I loved every minute of it, of being a B-back in that system. But we were kind of a very hybrid team. We weren't your Navy, Springfield, Salisbury kind of option team. We get some of those sets, but we were we would run midline mostly out of like an unbalanced eye set. Like it was almost Nebraska like. We were more like that. Then we get some sense and run some wing counter. And like we weren't like a particular option. We were kind of wing T option. We were all these things kind of together. But Coach Russ really, that's where it kind of started for me. And then I went off to college and played in a system, which was great, but I was not in an option system, but played against option systems. We had to play Springfield. We had to play Salisbury. I had to coordinate at Hartwick against Springfield and Salisbury. And I got to see the other side of that world now and how it was hard to stop. And they were so good at it for so long at Springfield and Salisbury that it was difficult to game plan against. So then fast forward, go all the way to when we get to Lake Highland. We were in 2017-18, we were an RPO team. We were a spread, inside zone, pin and pull, a lot of RPO stuff. And the problem we were having is that we were not good enough up front to run the ball when they would lighten the box and just say, our defensive line is better than your offensive line. We're just going to toss you around, because our quarterback, we're getting throw reads, but we're throwing into 8-man coverage or man-to-man, or we couldn't consistently run the football with what we personnel wise. And that's high school. You got to try to figure out what you can do with who you got. We had a good quarterback, but he was having to throw the ball into 8-man coverages and a lot of different looks. And some teams were daring us to run the football with a 3-1 box, 3-2 box, and we couldn't get it done. We graduated that quarterback. We graduated some guys in 2019. We had some athletes, but we didn't really have a quarterback returning. And that's where we kind of went. We knew we could play very good defense. We knew we were going to have to run the ball, and we knew if we were going to stay in games, we had to keep the game as close as long as possible. And so we went out that year, and we really went to Army first, and that was kind of where we started and visited with them. And that's where we went back to my time and my thinking. Okay, when I game planned against Salisbury and Springfield, when I played in high school, what gave us an edge? And it was going back to option principles. And so 2019, we were under center, flex bone, some double tight end stuff, looking a lot like Army. And we were trying to run the football, keep the game as close as long as possible, trying to find a way to win in the fourth quarter. We were not, we had 25 guys on the roster. We were not as good as a lot of people around there. And we struggled. And a lot of these guys on this great team this year were young. We're 9th and 10th graders back then. And we kept a lot of games close. We lost 2 by 3 points total, which would have made us 5-5 instead of 3-7 and possibly a playoff berth. But those guys, I'm proud of them. That senior class battled that year, kept games close. I mean, we lost 8-6 to a 9-1 Jacksonville Episcopal team who had a guy going to Penn State at tight end. We had Mark Brunell coaching, the old Jags quarterback was coaching. Yeah. He's coaching the Episcopal. They were phenomenal. We kept that game right where we wanted to and just couldn't get the 2-point conversion at the end to tie it up. So, we knew we had to find an edge, and especially the way our school is, how high academically it is, how highly selective. It's awesome. We got great kids. They're awesome to coach. We just had to find a way to be productively different. And it started with that. Then we knew these guys were going to grow up a little bit. We had some quarterbacks groom in the system. We want to expand the passing game a little bit more. And we kind of moved into and researched that next season into moving more towards the short pistol. And we got into the short pistol. We were able to use the same blocking scheme, so we didn't want to add more to our offensive line. We were able to expand our passing game a little bit more, but we really wanted to take a bigger jump that year, option-wise, and do more. But COVID hit, and we had no spring, no summer, and then we had literally 2 weeks to get ready. And they said, you got 2 weeks, and then you're going to start your first game. So at that point, it was, okay, what can we do that we already know from last year? Back them up a little bit in the short pistol, expand the passing game a little bit more, and be a little more dynamic, and go. And kids did a great job. We went 3-2 in the regular season in a very different year. We played in this kind of pod with some other private schools in the area. We played a couple teams twice, which was interesting. I'd asked my basketball coach about how you prepare for playing a team, twice, because I'd never played in a team twice in one season. Got our first winning season in 2 years, which was great for the kids, and then was able to make the playoffs, won our first playoff game in a long time, in 3 years. and then lost to a really good OCP team. So we really want to make a big jump that year. Fast forward, now we have spring and summer coming out of the 2020 season. We now have full spring, full summer, and we made the full commitment that off season to research and study how we're going to run triple out of the gun. And really, we wanted to make that jump maybe even earlier. But like I said, COVID really kind of slowed that process down. And really, we had to kind of just find what we could do quickly with that weird year. So we really studied and spent a long time researching the offseason. What was Davidson doing? What was Washington Lee doing? What was Coach DeMayo doing? We looked at everybody. We looked at New Mexico State and New Mexico. We looked at all the different Ferris State. We looked at all these different options of running the triple out of the gun, and really kind of settled on what Davidson and Washington Lee were doing, especially from a standpoint, when we talked to a lot of those guys, they're high academic schools like we are. And it really fit what they felt personnel wise, what they were getting, the style of kids they were getting. And we really fit that mold, but we're just a high school. We're very similar schools. We're just, the kids are younger. So we went all in on that. And really, I wouldn't go back. We loved every minute of it. I think it really fit our kids well. And we really, bought into it this season, and it gave us some ability to do a lot of different things within the offense. And we really enjoyed it. We really sunk our teeth into it, became really, what's the word I'm looking for, and almost enamored with it. And really has become kind of who we want to be now. Like really from the offseason studying it, but then now actually running it for a full season, this is really kind of where we're going to kind of hang our hat and be our bread and butter.
Let's talk about the great season that you have, man. You guys won a state championship, man, undefeated season. And then tell us a little bit about the SSAC, if you don't mind as well.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of, again, this goes back to that 2019 season, kind of deciding kind of who we want to be and where we want to go. As a smaller private school, we want to be able to have the ability to play other small privates. And the SSAC gave us the ability to do that, and kind of helped us build a schedule around being able to play other small private schools and not having to be forced to play maybe larger public schools that are a very different setup than us, just not the same, not every school is going to be exactly the same as the other one, but playing a smaller private is going to be a little bit more apples to apples than playing a public school with, 1,100 kids when we have 800 and we're private and we're a highly selective private. So we made the move to the SSAC, which was great. They've been awesome. It's been a great organization. Really welcomed us in that 2019, after that 2019 season. And so with COVID, we were playing that in 2020. Well, we played in that mini pod, and then we were able to join the SSAC playoffs once that started, and won a playoff game in there, and then lost in the second round. This year, fast forward, it's been great being able to schedule other privates that are similar to us, and they get into the playoffs this year. So what they do is the top 8 in their rankings make the championship playoff bracket. We were the 1 seed this year, and then we play off from there. So it's a little bit different. It's kind of, you have the big, 1A through 8A public school league with the FSSA, and then you have the SSAC as something else that, it's growing too. There's some other schools that have joined this past off season. It's just something that I felt, and our school felt as we were researching, gave our kids the ability to play for something, and gave our kids the ability to play against, some similar schools and compete and give them an opportunity to maybe, did we feel like we were going to be a lot better team this year? Yeah, we felt like these guys had gotten older. They were going to be seniors, so they were going to be a lot better. And we had ambitions of winning state title, but to be able to do this kind of stuff and have the year we did and see some of the joy and excitement on our campus and with our kids, it's been a great situation for us within the SSAC. So it's been awesome. Like I said, it's probably our closest knit team we've had here since I've been here.
I've heard nothing but great things about that conference, man, and I see it's growing, and there's even some financial incentives for belonging to that conference as a small school, correct?
Yeah, there's some things like sponsorship wise, things like that they can help you out with some of the things that you got to do on a yearly basis with some of their sponsors that can help you out.
Even the gate and stuff too, no, right? Yeah,
the gate does. For us, I'm going to be honest with you, that's not as big of a deal as it was for me when I was at a co-am outdoor, but like, yes, there's some financial aspects with it where they, this past year they could keep more of the game from playoffs than maybe with the public school league. And there's some other, other different opportunities for some smaller schools to be competitive, but also, make a bigger deal out of their experience, not just be the little guy all the time.
I think that's awesome.
Like I said, the championship game was awesome. And we played it at Lakeland Stadium there, right in the middle of Lakeland. Perfect size stadium for two small schools, awesome outdoor Christian. But let me tell you what, nobody left there without getting their money's worth. I mean, that game was two really, really good teams just going at it. I mean, they've got a kid going to Miami, Ohio. That's phenomenal. They have a middle linebacker that I'm still trying to figure out when we're going to actually, get a hand on him. Big, thick kid that filled hard. So it was two really good teams going at it. And that's why you had a 2019 game in the regular season, and then you had a 14-13 game in the state championship. So
now we had Bo Johnson. He was on, and I know he's their team's FHSAA. They're in Bluntstown, but he was on. But SSAC was doing some things to allow those little small 1A schools get in, and they do like a little bracket and everything, and made it into a big championship game up there in the Panhandle. Man, he's fired up to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's a cool deal. They get to have the Big Bend tournament there, and some of the different things they do with having the conference tournament, and it's exciting for the kids. Be able to play for some things, and obviously if you're good enough, you move on and go into the FSA bracket too. So there's some there's a lot of, we're redoing classification down here right now, and there's a big to-do about what's that going to look like in the future, and there's a lot of debate, and so there's a lot of things that are going to look maybe a little bit different here in the future in football, and it's exciting. It's exciting for the kids to maybe do some things a little bit differently.
I know Bo was having some issues with scheduling too, and it really helped him be able to get some schools to play. I know he was frustrated about that, so that certainly helped. For sure. No,
that helped us. That helped us, especially these last couple of years with scheduling, with finding some teams that were more like us.
Yeah. Well, Coach, you talked about going all in on the Davidson, Washington Lee stuff. So for the listeners that don't know, tell us a little bit about what that option style looks like, and and how your kids used it, and how it helped you win your state championship.
The big thing for me that I kind of obviously it's our first year, and I did a talk about this in a clinic about. We still have some growth in it, some things we need to learn and get better at. It was our first year doing it, and there was a lot of things that we were learning for the first time and seeing for the first time. The biggest thing for me that really got me into it, and then kind of really I saw as the year went on, was that the style of inside zone is not your traditional inside zone. Now I'll tell everybody that it's inside zone and fit it that way, but it's a little different, and it really gives you the ability. And I'm going to be very general here. I wanted to carry mid, triple, and triple at the same time, right? When I was understanding, there's a lot that goes into all that, right? And with this play, I wanted to get in the gun, but I wanted to have some of the best of both worlds. I wanted to be greedy and have some of the good stuff that you got out of mid, triple, and some of the good stuff that you got out of triple. And the way we're running this now is that really it's the same. It's the same play together. Yeah. Certain times it's going to look like mid, triple, and certain times it's going to look like inside veer. It's the best of both worlds. And I was looking for a version of dive option that is going to give me the best of those things. So when I saw an odd front, I wasn't going to have all different tags and different answers I was going to have. If I was in an even front, I could still, I was still getting some of the mid-triple. I wanted to be able to have both of those plays together. And now we do in one play. It really is. And I'll tell guys all the time, if I could tell you could have mid, triple, and triple in one play, would you do it? And I guess, less teaching. But really, we felt it was like that because the way we're blocking it, and the way we talk about with our guys about capturing the inside number, and really the aiming point in the mesh with the B-back of aiming at that backside hip of the center, and really him attacking the backside hip, but rarely is he ever going to take it backside. And when I mean backside, I mean, towards where you're zoning, really for layman's term, pushing those guys towards. Our play side is the read side of the inside zone. Mm-hmm. And we're really treating it like it's an option play, not like inside zone where people really want to talk about bouncing it towards, away from the mesh, or then hitting it up the middle, or then bending it back. we want to be able to either hit it off the backside hip of the center or bend that thing back like inside veer. And there's some clips I have, and I showed in the clinic that I pause it and our B back looks like he's running inside veer. And the way that it worked out with the way we're reaching that 3 technique on the backside with our guard and play side tackle to capture the inside number, we can either pop that backside A gap, or if that 3 technique or 2-eye washes across, that thing bends right back and ends up looking just like inside veer if I pause in a certain spot. So we wanted to have the ability to be in the gun. It gave us the opportunity to expand our jet game, our passing game. Now again, we're not an air raid by no means, but we throw it probably 10 to 15 times a game, somewhere in there. If we're throwing it more than 15, we're probably having some issues and needing to come back. But we were in that 10 to 15 range, and we were productive in the passing game, very efficient in the passing game, some very explosive plays down the field. But we really wanted to have a version option where we can run the inside zone style, but also match it to a lot of different defenses that we're going to see. And having that style of where we're teaching the guys that the read side was the play side, kept that same option mentality that we had from going from under center to pistol to gun. But now really it's more of an inside zone style. And really our guys, there's a lot of ways to teach inside zone. You can get real in depth and down the rabbit hole with that. For our guys, their number one thing that they're hearing is capture the inside number. You've got to capture the inside number, because we're really trying to gut the defense and split it right in half. And then if that closes, then we're going to bend that thing back towards the read, and you'll start to see how it looks. It no longer looks like mid triple. It starts to look like veer now in triple. Mm-hmm. So we really found that we could have a more running back style guy to it. But I was in that world where we were traditional inside zone back in 2017, 18, and we had our struggles with that, trying to block people up front. And I think this style allows for, we have one tackle was, he was 6 foot, 200 maybe. The other tackle was 5'11", 180. So it gives the ability to be able to run that style, but without having to have some monster guys up front that we got to just zone block everything. Our left tackle a couple of times, because the style that it is, he's getting blown up by the 5 technique on that one side, but we're bending it back towards the read anyway. It doesn't matter. Or the other issue we're having with under center and short pistol was that backside linebacker screaming over, we're running inside veer. Now he thinks it's traditional inside zone. He's got to fit that gap on his side. Right. And now we're capturing his inside number, hitting it down the middle, or bending it back towards the read. So it gives us the ability to really kind of have some of the best of both worlds and expand the offense from there. I explained it a lot better on film.
No, you're good. We had Scott on, and I felt like, during the conversation, that was my whole point was he finally explained gun triple to me, where you're working to the read side and not away. You know what I mean? And so typically that's not the case in gun, but he developed it that way. And it makes way more sense to me this way than every other way. You know what I mean?
I agree. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. That's where you're under center, right? Your gap scheme, everything's play side. And then when you go research, everything's not, except this style. Right. And so it made complete, when I heard him speak in Richmond, like maybe 6-8 years ago, it was like, one of those moments where you're like, this makes sense.
Yeah. We spent months last offseason getting our hands on everything we could, talking to everybody we could.
Yeah.
And really to research. And that's where it kind of clicked for us and really felt that it was the best for our guys, was when we started to get the idea of that was the philosophy behind it. Yeah. And then actually doing it. Listen, it took some time in spring practice. That's why we have spring practice, because it was ugly to start. And then once we started kind of get our feet underneath it, we have a running back that's explosive, and this allows him to be explosive and still have those option principles, and still have, the stuff we love seeing as option coaches, linebackers running out with pitch, just running with pitch guys when my B-back's running right down the middle of the defense, 100 miles an hour, all that great stuff. But from the gun, and really it made our quarterbacks feel more comfortable. They were doing some things that were more comfortable for them. stuff that they've been doing. Maybe, we had one quarterback transfer in, he'd been doing that all his life. And for me to get him to play under center, it's just going to take a lot of time. Not that we couldn't, it's just going to take a long time to get him caught up with a career of being in the gun his whole life. So let's try to match both worlds and try to get him involved, and really did a nice job with it. So.
And one last question, because I know Tony's got a couple. Did you do both
problem.
pistol and sidecar, just sidecar, both?
We did pistol and sidecar, both.
Okay.
And we would mix it up. There were some things that we would do. We try to make sure that was something that we were really conscious of during the season, that we tried to change some things up. So we weren't always doing certain things in sidecar, certain things in pistol. Yeah. I had our running back was great. Our B-back was great. He at times think, hey, coach, I think those linebackers think we're running certain stuff out of the pistol in this game. Hey, can I run an offset? Can I run 12? I don't want to say that. Can I run this in offset instead of pistol right now? So that way,
you're good.
So that way, they're not teeing off on it. And, we did some third things. We really liked some of our play action stuff out of pistol, because, the defense felt we were coming downhill right at them and kind of give them a different look. And it helped in protection and play action coming out of pistol than out of sidecar. So there were some things we learned that going to next season, some tweaks that we got that we had to learn, a little bit by trial and error during this first year.
Gotcha.
Coach, man, this is where it's really cool for me. We just spent all this time talking about the GTO and Davidson and Washington Lee and stuff, right? And then here you go. We're going to talk about Harding now, right? Yeah, because the way that they practice is just awesome, man. And we talk. That's the secret sauce, right? That's the real secret sauce. I know you did a good job in your recent clinic, man, breaking all that down, man. And just speak about how you guys practice.
Yeah, so that was another thing. Like, we want to, like I said earlier in the talk, we want to be productively different and go and find ways to do things better. And just because, we go and travel to Harding in 2019 and visit with them and learn how they practice. And at that time, we were starting to transition to the short pistol. And then COVID hit. I mean, literally a month later, COVID hit. We were at that clinic in February, and like by a month later, we were all at home. It's crazy just to think about it. But we wanted, even though they were under center, we were not going to be under center anymore. I want to see how they practice and utilize, their teaching ability and how they practice, because they're efficient at running it. And so, like you said, the secret sauce is how you teach things. Like, how are you able to go out there and practice and teach? We're very unique in our practice style. We're the only team in Florida. We might be the only team in most of the country that practices every day in the morning. So we practice at 6 a.m. every single morning throughout the year. We start a little bit later in training camp when the kids don't have school, but we don't start school to 8:30. We used to have an athletics period that started earlier, that we'd use that first period of time to get them showered, get them some breakfast, and get them changed and get them off to class. But we practice in the morning, a lot of it because it allows our guys to balance their high academic schedule. They can go see tutors. They really get that afternoon and late part of school to get that stuff taken care of. And we get them when they're kind of fresh too from the day. Yeah, they got to get used to getting up a little bit earlier, but they get used to it. And the guys see a benefit of it because they're done by 3:00. Their buddies are still going out to practice. And in Florida, lightnings and storms every day. So we get every ounce of practice in. So we go to Harding, and we really want to look at, okay, even though we were going to be a different style, we want to look at how were they teaching it. And so when we got into our practice style this year, we're really that kind of style of practice with Harding, where we break it down. I'll give you our in-season, for example. We get to Tuesday. Tuesday is going to be mesh period, option period, group pod, team mix, boom, we're done. That's our offensive time every single Tuesday throughout the entire year. And then within that is where we're going to script out, okay, group pod was always our GTO and our zone dive version of it. And then we're going to script out, what defenses we want to work at, because again, everybody talks about this, about you're not always be able to predict what you're going to see on Friday night, but get the idea of what you think you are. And then the extra stuff that you want to get, making sure you're repping that each week, because we've had teams that come out with a 4-man front and then jump into an on front, on us. Make sure we get that in mesh and then option drill, and really build up that progression where we're going from, Qs and centers, Qs and Bs. And then now we're working up to Qs, Bs, slots, and wide receivers and option drill. And then we go back and we work O-line with the slots and the Qs and the Bs and group pod. And then we put it all together in team mix and really kind of get our 11-11. Let's get it on kind of style of practice at that point. And then Wednesday, we get into 2-ball drill. And we can do some different things in 2-ball drill where we're working GTO, but we also work some jet handoff in there and some different things that, we want to work some mesh with. Then we get into, that's our 7-on-7 time next. So then we get into from 2-ball drill, we get into 7-on-7 offense, we get into 7-on-7 defense. We then go to a jet and kick pod. So we were a big jet team this year. And then also, zone kick team for those people who want to call it that. So that's when we would then go half, really, it was us versus bags and kind of a half field look that we wanted on that side. And we would work our jet game on one side and our kick game, and then flip flop it on the other side with that in a pod situation. And then go to team mix from there. And that would be our Wednesday. So we really took that hardening style and kind of wanted to make it maybe a little bit simpler than hardening was doing, because that's not all our kids were doing. Our kids had to play defense too at times, and really teach them within that and get a ton of reps in a short period of time. We only practice for training camp 2 hours, during the season, an hour and 45 minutes. But we get a lot done in an hour, 45 minutes. And especially we're even practicing both sides with defense and offense. So it's about how well you can teach it and what you can get done in those periods, and making sure that we're coaching it and building that repetition throughout that time, and really getting good at what we do. And if we have to do less, that's fine, because we want to make sure we're doing it well. And that's where I thought we really took a huge jump that first year, is because we really jumped into what we were going to do. And then we made a point to how we were going to practice it. What were the best ways to practice that stuff to get that stuff done, and getting in those different pod periods and those different team periods with our guys really help teach and reinforce the rules and the teaching of that. We get into option drill, we're working all the different perimeter blocks that we want to work, and all the different, that was a big pull pitch time for us. Option drill, I would tell my coaches, we want to get, 4 out of 5 of them are pull pitches, give them a give read once, 1 out of 5 to keep them honest. And then mesh was the opposite. And mesh was a place where we spent a lot of time in spring and summer and fall to make sure that we got the gun mesh down, because that was a huge thing for us. Tony got to see some of our clips when we first started. It was not where we are now. And it took some time, but we went all in on it, and you had to make a decision on how you were going to practice the stuff to get that development as fast as you could. And so that way you can be, you're gaining time on maybe some other teams who are not as efficient at practice, and maybe haven't thought out their scripting and their pod period and how they're going to use those periods. And you're gaining time on them with your teaching and your production. Because really, when it really comes down to it, all we got the same is time. None of our programs are all the same. The only thing we've got is the amount of time we have on that field, and how much can I get done with my guys productively. How well can I coach them in that time before we get off the field to try to get an edge on you. That time at Hartwick was awesome. We took a lot of what they did and just, maybe simplified it and meshed it towards gun triple and practiced that way. So yeah, we're a gun triple team, but we practice like an under center flexbone team that is, they're a machine. And that's what we want to try to become, as a machine, but just doing it in a different style of option.
Yeah.
And just, your kids are seeing every front, every stunt, every day, that kind of thing, right? Just like, we try to have an emphasis and try to maybe lean towards a little bit more of a certain thing that we think we're going to see. But yeah, we're going to give them, forming a front look and out of front look. To break it down, we're going to give some form of a 4-4, some version of 4-3, and some version of an odd every day in all those periods and all those pods. Whether it's mesh and option drill and group pod and jet kick pod and team mix. And really team mix is where we can kind of really give them some situational work. When we get into Thursday, it'd be 2-point period and some 2-minute stuff. Like I said, we have a 7-on-7 period on Wednesdays where we got a lot of our tempo passing in. If we want to go a little bit faster and increase the tempo and throw the football, we got into that period. So really being able to break down those different things into group structure, start out with some individual stuff, but really get into group structure, and then obviously in the team mix. That mesh period, bringing over the centers, and that mesh period was a critical part of getting this thing started. That was a huge part of it. Having the centers, quarterbacks, and Bs together for so long during that year
to get that down. And it paid dividends. I mean, our state semifinal game, there's teams all across the state canceling games that night. They thought the tropical storm was bad enough to cancel games. Both teams were like, we're playing this thing. And we came out and our kids did a great job. Our center's quarterback, we had no exchange problems, none. And the other team across the way was balls over the head, at their feet, fumbling them in the back, and just all over the place. And same two teams, same environment, same field, same turf field. Everything was the same. And our kids really made a commitment to it all year long in Meshpoint to make sure that exchange was perfect, no matter what was going on.
Cool. Well, Coach, let's talk about some major plays. What other plays are you running besides the GTO within that system?
Yeah. I mean, for us, I started with GTO, and then we'll get into a zone, zone dive-ish version of GTO. Where we're blocking number one in the option count, and we'll do it a couple of different ways. That's the part of the experimentation year that we were in. Blocking a traditional way with a slot, trying to dig that 5 technique out, that number one in the option count out. But then we'll get into some stuff where we're in a tight end set, and that tight end's trying to use the same technique that our tackle and guard are using on a 3 tech, but he's doing it on a 5, and really becomes more outside veer. And we're kind of stumbling. We were an outside veer team. We never have been. And we kind of towards the end of the year, we had talked to, some of the guys who run this about it. We're kind of that's too much for us right now. And we kind of got against some odd teams. And every time we talked to, Coach Jones was great, awesome resource for us at Washington Lee. And he's like, we really like some of that stuff against odd teams. And I'm like, well, let's give it a whirl. And really nothing changed for us except for that tight end. That tight end just had to work on that reach, and it was great. But if we're getting a 0 and a 4-eye, and then a 9 outside that tight end, an odd front, really that becomes the way we did it, because we didn't feel good about our center and the nose guard being one-on-one. We aced that with the center and the guard and worked that to the backside linebacker, and then we worked that same double that you would have on a 2-eye, but with a 4-eye. But it was between the tackle and the tight end instead of tight end and the guard. So those two would work that reach in that 4-eye. If that 4-eye really wanted to work hard against that play side tackle, he'd wash him down, tight end would climb. And now we've got multiple entry points for that B-back to get in there. And I got a couple of clips in the state championship game. The first series of the game, we marched right down the field running it and done a great job with it, with that. So some sort of that we got into, we brought our 2 stud linebackers in, put them in the slot, and kind of got into a heavier set and ran the same thing, but then we wrapped that backside slot to be an extra lead blocker against a 4-4, and ran that same zone dive version of it. The first guy would dig out the one, the one in the option count, the second guy would wrap through. We did some stuff like that in short yards, but all the same concepts up front for the offensive line. Nothing changed. I can mess around that backfield all I want. Same stuff. And then we were huge. So GTO, our zone dive version, GTO kind of outside veer, where we're kind of going into the second year. And then jet was our that's what kind of we were known for. We were explosive jet. We've got 2 really fast slots. 2 of the best guys in the state in track are slots. And we used that thing like it was the 200 in track. And we were very effective in getting into some unbalanced sets and condensing the receiver down and going crack and getting the slot on the edge against the corner and getting full speed on the edge outside. We were very explosive. I think we're looking at we were close. I can look at my stuff. I wish I had it in front of me. Darn it. We were like 13, 14 yards of rush on jet. Our B-back was 9 yards of rush this year. So jet was a huge thing for us. Out of a lot of different sets, just depending on what you were giving us and who we needed to handle. Did we need to try to do a better job on number 1 in the option count? Was he the problem? Was number 2 the problem in the option count? What was the problem? And we would adjust our blocking scheme on the perimeter from there. But again, our kids rep the heck out of that, because that's all we did in jet kick pod on every Wednesday. In season, and then during training camp, we were doing it, even more in our install periods. So we got very efficient at jet. So really it was, GTO, zone, jet. And then we got into, some kick game. And we ran a couple different ways. We ran zone kick with the quarterback from the gun, which we had done in the short pistol, also was very effective for us in the short pistol. And then we started running it with the slot. because we got so much movement from the defense of trying to box our jet in. Like everybody was screaming, don't let them run jet with those guys. Don't let them run jet. Don't let them run jet. So we would use our same zone kick blocking scheme and just hand it to the slot instead. So it was as soon as he got the ball from the quarterback, that thing was automatically getting cut up inside. It was an easy kick out for our B back. And it was a nice adjustment against teams that really want to try to maybe put number 1 and number 2 outside our tight end and jet and try to box jet in. It was almost an automatic cut up for us. Tony and I would I was trying to, I was not a full, wing T coach, but I was trying to use some stuff. We got some from wing T guys where it was that red light stuff. And
red light.
Yes. We're trying to do some stuff without me having to be a full, that wasn't really who we are.
Yeah.
Fully. We were a GTO, but being able to run that stuff without giving a lot of guys extra to learn about.
It was cheap.
It was very cheap.
Just a vertical cut and C gap.
Yeah.
It's that big a deal.
And it was great against, again, odd teams, and then also against teams that want to be trying to really get outside and try to box our jet in for us. But that was, out of multiple formations, we bounced around some different formations, but that was the extent of our run game. That was really it. We've got some ideas. My next research project, I try to pick one every year that I really spend all my time on. So our next one, we're going to, get into some stuff this offseason with some counters and different things, some different looks to try to counter some of the stuff that we've been successful with, because that's going to be what the defense is going to do to us. And our passing game was really good. Our passing game, we're a big quick game team, a lot of quick game. We had maybe 3 or 4 drop back concepts, a couple play action concepts, and we were huge. We loved it, and we're going to continue to expand it. We were a big dash team from the gun. Mm-hmm. So hitch boot. So, I tell my quarterbacks, throw that hitch to death. If they're going to give it to us, keep throwing it. And we were very successful with that. We loved it and really want to expand. Our quarterbacks liked it. It got rid of some problems that we saw in the past with running just straight. We wanted to run sprint out in the past because of our quarterback's abilities and our offensive line abilities. But we got in a sprint out game and people would just bring guys off the edge and just be dudes running for it. It was just hard to get that thing. I try to figure out how to block it better. And maybe I'm just not a good enough coach at that. But then we got into this system and it kind of got me what we wanted with sprint out, but the protection was just so much better because they were just setting everything up for a drop back. And then we were able to sprint out from there and really boot out, but it wasn't when you straight sprint, those dudes are just coming hard off the edge. And it was always difficult for our B back and our offensive line to try to get that thing protected. Mm-hmm. Where with this, one, we could be throwing the hitch and never get to the boot ever. And then 2, if we did, everybody's already set up to try to rush the straight drop back. And then we were able to get out to the edge so much easier than we were in the past. So that was a big thing for us this year, between GTO and really the passing game. That was a big addition for us. Passing wise was that. We got a lot of cheap, I wouldn't say cheap, we weren't cheap, but, very efficient passing yards and then also first downs because of that play.
I love that play, man. I got into it big time this year too, man. I know we was talking it up on the Telegram, and that's old Tony DeMeo right there, right, Coach McLeod?
Pitch pass.
Yeah, he started it, and he if you ask him, well, I guess he'd probably tell you, but ultimately, what was happening in his sprint out game is he could block the edge, but you condense coverage when you cut off half the field for a defense to have to worry about. So
sure,
he felt like as he approached the perimeter with his quarterbacks, that he would get coverage squeezed or tilted, and he couldn't make the throws he wanted there. And that guy ended up, and he had a really good, particularly when he was at Charleston, he had a really fast kid, right? And so that it was always perimeter, everything squeezed, and that kid's gone. You know what I mean? So he could never get the ball out. So he started doing this to keep the coverage principles balanced without squeezing or tilting, and then he could get to his throws, So great idea. I think Kennesaw does a really good job with it too, and so.
Yeah, I stole a lot of that from Kennesaw. I'll admit it, right? Again, that just shows you you don't have to be an under center or a gun. We're stealing ideas from a team that's an under center option team, and if their practice ideas and some of their stuff works, I mean, why can't I do it with a quarterback at 4.5 yards? And it was really, like I said, really effective and really efficient for us.
Yeah. Well, we helped the team up here. They were like traditional zone read spread, right? But they were a while off, you know what I mean? And so, people were squeeze scraping them pretty heavily, you know what I mean? And so we were helping them run zone dive with that Y there to help dig the 5 and do some other stuff, make a triple call. Anyway, it worked out pretty good for them. And it had 2 really good players in the backfield, but just trying to help each other, borrow concepts, right? They had a couple of pretty decent pass concepts out of gun we borrowed from them. And anyway, it's always good.
That's how things evolve. You hybrid stuff. That's how. I'm not inventing any of this stuff. Like, it's not like you're evolving it, and you're kind of taking this and hybriding it together, and now you have a new animal out of 2 things that you've taken from 2 places, and that's just it's an awesome thing about the game. I love about the game is being able to kind of do this kind of stuff, and kind of there's so many different things you can do with a team of 11 guys versus 11 guys on a football field, that there's so many factors and variables that it's exciting to see what you can create.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, Coach, we surely appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. I know we've been trying to get you on for a little bit, man.
I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate it. Anytime I love this. I love this kind of stuff. Just talking to coaches, talking ball. I could do this for hours on end, and just like I said, that's how you grow. That's how you get better ideas. That's how the profession grows. And I was very fortunate to have a high school football coach that I wouldn't say push me into the profession, but help me get to the profession and kind of see that I could be a part of it, and I could be, I could be something in it, and then help me nurture in it too by taking me, he didn't have to. I was a college kid. I was already graduated. I was gone. He was on other teams that he was coaching there at high school. He didn't have to take the time that he did to nurture me as a young coach, to take me places, to introduce me to people, to kind of, get me in those situations. And, you get to a certain point of your career. I'm not saying I'm that old yet, but you get to that part of your career where, now I kind of like doing that kind of stuff. I kind of like talking to people. I kind of like sharing. I kind of like, doing that. Cause again, like nobody had to do that for me. And I appreciate that about other people being able to reach their hand out and help me and get me started and kind of, get me going on the path. So I enjoy it.
For sure. And also you spoke at the Illinois High School Coaches Association clinic, right? Online.
Yes.
Mark Grounds. He's the president, our guy. Right. Dave Jacobs. Right.
Yep.
And so for the listeners, definitely can check out your stuff there. You can get a mega pass that'll do like a bunch of state clinics and your replays on there. So, check it out for the listeners that want to learn a little bit more about what Ben's doing with his GTO stuff. And then maybe just before we head out, maybe, what's the best way for somebody that wants to pick your brain? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably emails would be the best to start with, and we can kind of set something up. My email is my first name, so my first initial. So B Bullock, BULLOCK at LHPS.org. So it's B Bullock at LHPS.org. That's my email. Probably the best way to get a hold of me first. And then my Twitter account is at Coach_Bullock. And that's probably the next best way to get in touch with me and connect and kind of chat and go from there. And then, that's one of the things, great things about where we've been in right now is you can jump on the computer and talk some ball, and I can pull up Huddle and show you some stuff visually about kind of what we're doing and kind of where we're going. And like I said, that like you were saying earlier with that Clint talk, that talk, I wanted to give a perspective, like, it was about being the first year of doing this. Like we were by no means a 10-year juggernaut in the system. By no means we've had great success. We love it this past year, but kind of our, what we did this first year, how we taught them, to get to where we are, like what we felt with that kind of Harding system, how we could teach those guys faster and maybe catch up on time that we didn't have. We weren't going to be running, this is our first year running it. and kind of the things that we did to try to get them to a high level as fast as we could. So it was really kind of from that talk was kind of from the perspective of, first year doing it. Like, if you're thinking about jumping into this world, here's what we did this year, and this is the struggles we had, and some of the great things out of it, and some of the things we learned, and how we're going to go forward in year 2.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll make sure we put your email and your Twitter in the show notes for people to.
I think that's important sometimes. Sometimes you go to clinics and you're listening to guys that have been, running a system for 20 years, and it just sounds like, easy and perfect. At a time, your first year in this thing, and how do I get this thing going? And that's probably my biggest question to everybody last year when I was researching this, and 2 years ago it was Jet. Like, how do I get this thing going? Like, how do I even get started? And coming from that perspective, really kind of will probably benefit a lot of coaches.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, listen, man, can't thank you enough. It was awesome.
I appreciate it.
Thanks,
It was
Coach.
awesome, guys. Anytime.
Yeah, stay warm down there. Okay.
We'll be okay. You'll be okay. It's
I don't want to, I don't want any iguanas falling out of trees on your head.
Listen, I that's like South Florida. Like,
there you go.
I still got to get used to it. Listen, we'll get into like late October, November, and like it'll dip to like maybe like 62 in the morning for practice. And you would think like, we're going up Mount Everest or something. I got kids out there like I'm like, guys, have you ever really been skiing? Like maybe like snow and that actually cold looks like the guys, they're cold. The coach, man, it's cold. This is we're Florida cold. I'm like, guys, this isn't cold, man. Like, but it's a different perspective. I try to get those guys a little acclimated because some of our guys want to go north to play football.
Yeah.
We got a kid playing at Brown. We got a kid playing at Wesleyan. We got a kid playing at Hamilton. We send a lot of guys out of state. I'm like, we gotta find a way to acclimate you guys. So you're ready to go. So it's great hearing the stories when they come back that first Christmas, man. Coach, it's cold. That's a whole different level of cold. So
Yep.
no doubt.